The reason I do this and the reason I'm able to share my lens on this topic is because I've helped probably at this point over 1,000 clients. I haven't done the numbers, definitely hundreds of people like yourself, moms and dads, through the separation divorce process. And what happened there for me was, while I was being a family law lawyer, I also was going through my own personal trials and tribulations, because of course everyone has a story, right? So while I haven't been divorced, I have gone through, unfortunately, the worst loss of my life. I had lost a child at delivery, and I thought life was never going to be the same again. A year later from that time, I realized that even your biggest challenges, the ones that you look at and go, but no, Rad, I'm not going to be able to get out of this one, you can transform them. And not only can you transform them into a positive, it can become your biggest catalyst for change. It can become your biggest miracle. And that's exactly what happened to me. I also have been homeless at the age of 16, so I have experienced loss and I've experienced separation, which is really what separation and divorce looks like. So as I've been guiding my clients, I have always been able to kind of empathize from a different angle what they were going through. So as a lawyer who really loves her clients and really wants to serve, as I was serving these clients, I realized the legal process, while it serves a purpose, is limited. And on the flip side, what I learned through my own transformation is that you and I are unlimited. And that when we shift ourselves, we start to shift how we move through these major challenges and how we come out of it. So I started to consciously coach my clients, saying like, hey, what about if you started to do some meditation on the side? What if you use a more clear intention before you call your ex or read his text messages, which are triggering you, right? And what I saw over time was that these tools were actually much more helpful than the $500 letters that I was sending for my clients, right? So I just want to take a moment to acknowledge you right now, because although I haven't met you, I have a sense of what you're going through. And what I feel is that you guys have the hardest job on the planet, because it's one thing to be a conscious human being, but it's a wholly different thing to have to do that with the highest stake in your life, which is your children. And then to do it with a person that you kind of like the least at this time, right? Some people will say to me, well, we're kind of getting along. And then there's the other end of the spectrum where they're just like, he triggers me every time he opens his mouth. You know, he's the problem. How do we get rid of him? And I say to people like, I don't get rid of bodies, right? Like, I'm a lawyer, that I can't give your ex a head transplant, right? And when we start to think about power as an external source, it's very disempowering, right? Because people want to be able to wave a magic wand and be able to change their ex. But the reality is that we can't do that, right? And that's kind of premise number one of the program. And this is a Viktor Frankl quote that I'm completely paraphrasing. But when you realize that you can no longer change the people or the circumstances outside of you, you find yourself challenged to start to change yourself, right? And this is not us saying, oh, I'm taking responsibility for the breakup of the relationship. This is not saying that what somebody else is doing is right. But what this is saying is, I'm ready to take my power back, okay? I'm ready to move from victim mode, where all the power lies outside of me, with the lawyers, with the judges, with my ex, with my, right? And start to take responsibility. But on the beautiful other side of responsibility is to take your power back and to realize that what it means to be a conscious co-parent is raising your perspective, clearing your lens, and starting to see things a little differently. I just want to give you like a very simple analogy, right? How are we as parents when we have been at a party, we stay up late, because I know we're not all partying as much as we used to, right? We stay up late, we're on 4 hours sleep, or we have a work deadline, whatever it is. We haven't had our morning coffee. The toaster starts off a little mini fire, and now your child asks you for something. What kind of response do you give your child? Compared to if you had 9 hours sleep and your parents just took the kids for the weekend and you've been getting your nails done and you're feeling refreshed and rejuvenated, whatever it is that fuels your tank, right? And your child asks you the same question. like, Mommy, can I have my iPad? Which I'm sure you're hearing a lot right now. How does our response change? And that's just a very simple analogy. And you and I know that even within our own home, just sleep versus no sleep would change how we respond to situation. So now what I'm proposing to you and what I've seen in my own life, what I've seen in my clients' lives, is that when you start to go further into fueling that tank, you now start to raise your own game. You have the hardest job in the world, and you are the most motivated group, which is why I love working with conscious co-parents, because they are the most motivated, because they're not only here for themselves, they're here for their children. They don't want their kids to go through the conflict anymore. You know, they'll say, oh, well, when my kid's with dad, he says X, Y, Z, or his parents are talking to them, or the new girlfriend is talking to them, right? And I'm sure I'm speaking to some of you right now. So how do we transform what's happening in another home, right? We can't control that household. So parents are even more motivated to raise the game in their own household. Now, the reality is, you know, if you're on a plane and there's an oxygen issue, right? We all know this analogy. What do they tell you to do first? They tell you to put the mask on yourself first. And what I find with so many of my clients, especially the working moms of the world, they don't have time for themselves. They don't even know what that looks like, right? When I say to them, where are you on the family calendar? They don't even know what I'm talking about. And what we're talking about here is more than just nails and spas, which is great stuff. This is about inner transformation. This is about recreating your life from scratch, from this new chapter that you've been given, from the inside up. Just small little tweaks in your schedule, small little new habits that you start to introduce, such as meditation, such as a gratitude practice, such as taking time for yourself, reading a better book, turning off the news, right? Not only am I interested in helping people reduce the conflict, but what I'm seeing what's lacking is that people have lost the vision for their life. So some people think, well, what does this have to do with that, right? Like here we're talking about peaceful parenting. What I'm saying to you is that you're like a garden, okay? So either your garden is thriving, or you might say to me, Rod, my life's not so bad. I got a couple vegetables growing, but there's some weeds. Or you might be saying, my whole garden is a complete disaster. Nothing's growing. The soil's dry. I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm not even sure if there's seeds in there. Okay? What I know to be true for my own life, and I tell you sitting here humbly that my life exceeded my expectations a long time ago. I've been through hell and back a couple of times, and I'm living my dream life. And this is how. It was about me recreating my garden. And when you're trying to fix your garden, can you just fix one side of your garden? Like, can you say to me, Brad, my garden is in shambles, but I'm just going to fix the cucumbers right now. I'm just going to change the soil in that corner. I'm only going to water that section, and I'm only going to put sun on that section. You can't. Right? The reality is that when you put water only in one corner, the other dry sections is going to suck that water right out. And again, appear to be depleted, right? So I want you to consider what you would like your life to look like if you were to start from scratch today. This is even beyond just fixing the conflict, because what you're telling me is, oh, I need to fix the cucumbers. And what I'm saying to you is, why don't we pull the weeds first? You know, might take us 10 days. But if we do 10 minutes for 10 days and we just yank those weeds out, now we're talking, right? And then in the next week, why don't we change the soil? Why don't we go get top grade soil and replace it and get some high quality seeds, right? Now we take the bed of your garden and we get a hammer and we kind of bring it all in together because the soil was kind of overflowing. And this is an analogy for the inner work. Now you're like this fertile ground for anything that you desire. Now you can look over your shoulder and go, you don't even have to look. You could just go, cucumber, I got this. And you throw it over and it starts to grow, right? And the reality is that separation is the hardest time because it is unearthing so many aspects of your lives, right? There is nothing more important than a separation agreement, in my opinion, because there's no contract. that deals with your kids, your house, your job, your income, your dog, your everything, your boat, your everything in one document, right? In one breakdown. So what I'm suggesting to you is, well, what if we could raise the fulfillment for you in other areas, in addition to your co-parenting? What ends up happening, what I've seen, and I have a former student in the group here who could attest to this, is that, and I didn't plant her here, but I'm thrilled that she's here. Not only will you see as you apply this formula that the conversation with your ex is starting to get a little calmer, that you're able to actually, as you move and heal your own aspects of resentment and anger and sadness and the wounds that we have when we come out of such deep disappointment and separation. But now the other aspects of your life start to pick up. And the student that's in the group here, she actually, within a few weeks of us doing her program, got a new job and started to remember who she was and started to remember, okay, I'm allowed to create this new life, right? What I say to people is when you're getting married, there's so much planning that goes in there, right? We envision the dress, the band, and the DJ, and the food, right? When we're having a baby, we envision the nursery and the onesies we're gonna buy and that baby shower. Well, this is a turning point in your life too. And what I want you to start to think about as you're starting to take your power back, right? In a positive way, power in a positive way, meaning you are a creator, okay? And you have the ability to create and pull yourself out of this and create your dream life. Think about what your next chapter is going to look like. And I think that's something that I find a lot of my clients have forgotten about because they're just so busy surviving. They just got to get the kids to karate and swimming. Their ex is driving them bonkers. He's not paying child support. The lawyer bills are coming in. When is this process going to be done, right? And what I'm saying is that when you shift you, all of that becomes easy to navigate. And almost secondary, you're now back in the driver's seat, starting to think about who the heck am I, right? Who am I? You know, as moms, we lose ourselves. I say to my kids sometimes, you know, I used to be a person before I was your mother, right? Like I'm not just mom. I have to say it to my husband, I think I said it in the last week, right? And then you add to that separation and divorce where you don't really know how much money you're going to have at the end of this. There's fear, there's scarcity, there's all this worry, rightly so. So how do we move from that fear into love? How do we start to go from victim to conscious creator? And that's what these tools are designed to do.